So today we're going to talk about the dullness and repetitiveness of American life. So this is something that the majority of Americans experience on a daily basis. So this isn't something that's kind of just constrained to a specific portion of the population. This is something that at least three-quarters of us experience on a daily basis, and that is, again, the dullness and repetitiveness of what I would say is like a corporate lifestyle here in the United States. So, what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, we live the same life almost every single day. Maybe excluding the weekends, maybe including the weekends, depending on how much we're all struggling. But a lot of us are working excessive amount of hours. So, what used to be the 40-hour weekday is no longer. Many of us are working 50, 60, even sometimes up to 70, 80 hours a week. Now, if we're working two full-time jobs. And some of us even work more than that, three. There's people out there that work four jobs, which is kind of crazy to really even think of, but it's just how things have become in this country. And, essentially what I'm trying to say is that, we're living the same life every day. We go to work, we come home, we take care of responsibilities at home, we go to sleep, and we repeat the same exact day over and over and over for whatever amount of years. Ugh, excuse me. And then essentially that's it. You die. So, we're kind of trapped in this rat race here in this country where it's all about corporatism. It's all about work, 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 work. That's it. We're stuck in this cycle and there's no way out of it. At least for the majority of people there isn't. And we're essentially just living the same life every single day. It's, again, work, eat, sleep. Work, eat, sleep, and do some chores. And then occasionally, if you have a day off, well, you're probably too tired to do anything. So you just go to sleep and you relax and you don't do anything. And if you do something, it's probably something mundane and boring and local. Or maybe it's not boring. I mean, maybe you value the time you spend with your family, or you go out and see a movie, or whatever the case is. Completely fine. There's no complaints, nothing bad to say about that. But what I'm trying to say is that if we're living the same life every single day, what gives? Because you have all these gurus and all these guys and women and men, whatever you want to say, on social media, on YouTube, that preach the same thing. Don't get coffee, don't have any fun, save every penny, invest every penny, and by the time you're 65, you'll have $1 million in the bank, $2 million, whatever. And of course, well, they don't tell you is that inflation will eat the life out of that money by the time you're even 65 if you're 20, 30 years old, my age. And of course, you'll be working and spending the rest of your young, youthful, healthy years doing nothing. And then when you're 65, well, by then, probably 70, 75, retirement age at that time. Because, again, most people that are in their 60s now, I know so many people, they're not retiring. I mean, they just can't retire. They don't have enough money saved. They have a good amount of money saved, but it's just not enough to live on. And with the prices, I mean, if they sell their house and downgrade maybe to an apartment and spend the rest of their living years living in an apartment and, scrounging by and not having to spend any money, yes, maybe they can survive. But again, we all have our different, what makes us happy, what we want to do in life. Everyone's entitled to their own thing. But what I'm just trying to say is that essentially, why do we want to live this life? There's so much opportunity in this world, right? Have someone that's young, in their 20s and 30s. Hey, if you want a corporate job, if you want to buy a house in America and spend $500,000, $700,000, whatever, and you want to live here and try to replicate the American dream, all for you. There's no issue with that. Everyone is entitled to do what they want to do in life. Everyone is entitled to follow their dreams. But what I'm pointing at here is that why do we want to live the same life when there's so much opportunity elsewhere, right? So, essentially, there are some pointers that maybe some of these rich people and people that are, quote unquote, out of touch with life, they do have some good points. I mean, of course, you have to try to minimize your debt. You have to try to, build an income stream. You have to try to, save as much money as you can if you want to actually step out of this box that we call America, where it's just work, eat, sleep, chores, and actually experience life. If you want to go internationally and live, if you want to travel internationally, if you actually want to live your life, you have to get out of this box. So I want to inspire people to not only attempt to do that, but to actually, start putting a plan together to do that. And of course, I have mentioned in a previous video where I want to move to Brazil within the next 5 years, at least half the year. I want to inspire other people to do their own, because not everybody has to go to the same place. I mean, there's so many other countries in the world where you can go to. There's expats that live all over the world, whether it's from Thailand, Indonesia, Australia, Vietnam, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, in the Caribbean, in Europe, wherever you want to go. There's so many countries in the world where you can go and make a better life for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for whatever, that doesn't involve having to live this rat race here in the United States, where it's, again, work, eat, sleep, chores. And that's what I call it. And, America is essentially, just become this giant scam. You need a car, right? And you're going to pay an exorbitant amount of money, even if you do have, pretty good credit, because, prices have gone up in the past, decade or so. Insurance is out of control. Then you have all of the car taxes. You have the registration. Depending on your state, you may have emissions. And this is all just car, not even including your health care, which is crazy expensive in the United States. The rent's crazy expensive. And while you're paying all of these bills, not even including the food and education and all the other expenses, you have to try to save money for an emergency fund. You have to try to save money for if you ever want to buy a house. You have to try to save money if you ever want to have a vacation. If you have to save money if you ever want to do anything. You want to go to a bar, you want to go to a club, you want to go to a movie, whatever. Life has become extremely unaffordable, and we have to work more and more and more just to afford these things, and not even just that, just to take care of ourselves and our kids and our families. And it's just a massive conundrum. And what I really hope people take out of these videos that I make is that, again, I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm not trying to preach anything that's like anti-American, anything of that sort. I mean, this country does have some positives. You can go outside right now, walk down the street, depending on where you live, of course. Let me not just say that in general. And without the fear of so maybe something bad happened to you. It depends on the neighborhood. Things have changed, of course. We have ICE out on the streets now. You have, violent criminals. Maybe it's not that. Maybe that was a bad example. But yeah, if you want to create a business right now, today, I can go on my state's website in Connecticut, and I can create an LLC. And I can create a business if I have some money in the bank. It makes it easier if you're really trying to start something of that sort. I understand that life, again, it's definitely different than it was a decade, 2 decades ago. So look, maybe some of these examples are outdated, but America affords some liberties and some freedoms that maybe other places don't. But it's very difficult to kind of gauge where you want to be in life here nowadays, because it's like, okay, at my age it's like a turning point. I'm not 20 anymore, but I'm not 40, so I'm like in the middle point, and I have to think for myself personally, is this a life that do I want to stay here another 10 years? Do I want to be a 40-year-old person who have never actually experience life, because you really can't experience life unless you're rich in the United States. So we'll put that bluntly. That's the truth. You can argue with it all day, but that's the truth. And, you know, I've been places. I mean, I haven't been too many places outside of the country, but I've been all over. I've been all throughout the East Coast, some of the interior. I've been to Canada. I mean, I wish I've done more. And of course, that's why I'm kind of attributing this, rat race lifestyle, because it's like they push this dream, like go to college. Okay, I went to college. I went to college for 5 years. Some of it was a little bit, the pandemic kind of interfered, so that's why it ended up taking longer than usual. So I spent about a sixth of my life already in college. For what? To get out, and there was no jobs. I've applied to like 140, 150 jobs. Got three back, I think three or four. One of them, I actually got to the second round of interviews. The rest of them, either three, I got interviews. Didn't get any of them. And I took three minors. I minored in three things in college, aside from my major. And, I took certification programs at other colleges as well. None of it helps. Of course, I'm not, complaining. I'm not giving up, but I'm just kind of laying it out for y'all, like how hard it's becoming increasingly hard. Like the bachelor's degree is like the new high school diploma. It literally does not have the value it had 20, 30, 40 years ago. So, kind of just laying it out for y'all. I'm just telling you, like, this is how things have become. It is definitely a lot more difficult. It's more difficult than ever, to really, kind of get by here and to really advance here. I was, gracious enough that I kind of live in an area where it's really, we live in the city, but, we have a lot of suburbs outside, which I started a home improvement and landscaping business, so I was able to really, kind of utilize that. But that's not a business where I can take, to another state, really, and just, like, expand right there. It takes time. It took me quite a while to actually gain a good customer base and to expand, because it's like a business where it stays in one area. So of course, I'm not complaining, but that is I would like to have used my degree. I would like to have a decent job, of course, where it's like I can actually utilize my skills, but it's very difficult in today's economy. And even doing so, again, it puts you in this rat race. And the whole point of life is to really explore and have freedom, and that's what I'm working on. Building income streams, and income streams that flow without me actually having to utilize myself and be in a position where I have to stay somewhere and work. And that's really important if you actually want to move abroad, or if you want to do a lot of traveling. And unfortunately, I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, legal issues and such on. So it took me a while to really pick up the pace. And this country is very difficult, depending on where you grew up, where you're born. The economic situation you were born into. It's a lot, but the point is, it's like you got to start somewhere, and eventually that's where it kind of came from, and worked my way up. But you have to really think that, again, going back to what I was saying earlier. Do you want your life to be working, eating, sleeping, and chores? That is not the American dream that our previous family members, our ancestors, our fathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers came here to do. They came here because they wanted a better quality of life. Some people achieved it, some didn't. But in today's world, things are a lot different in this country. We're kind of cemented in the fact that the top portion of the society here in this country has that life, and the rest of us don't. So we're divided between the have and the have-nots. And again, you can stay in this country, you can live your life here, but it's definitely difficult, more difficult than it was for our fathers and grandfathers, economically speaking, in terms of trying to succeed financially in this country. So moving forward, we're kind of stuck in this, same routine every single day, where we just wake up and we'd repeat the same days over and over and over and over again. And many of us in this country, um, a lot of people don't see the results because it's so difficult to survive financially. So it's like, you have people, they go work 2 3 jobs and they come home and they still don't have any money because the jobs just don't pay enough. The wages aren't moving, the prices continue to climb, and they have to support their families. They have to pay all these bills, insurance costs, childcare costs, education costs, and before they know it, they don't have anything left, and they're stressed out, they're frustrated, and it's completely understandable. I mean, again, I've seen it, I've lived it, completely understandable. But you know, I guess you could say what gives. Um, Really don't know. It's very difficult to really kind of sit here and say, that things are going to be okay, because I'm not one to lie to anybody. I'm not going to sit here and just say, yeah, in 5 years, 10 years from now, this country is going to be in such a great position, or things could get better, because we don't know whether it's going to go, it's going to go in a positive direction or a negative direction. We don't know, and it's really up to you. I mean, it's your choice. I've made my choice, but I just kind of want to inspire other people to make their own choice, because I know it's difficult, especially if you have children. I don't have children, and it's sometimes people can look at it as a curse, and sometimes it can look at it as a blessing. But personally, given how I grew up and how I guess the experiences that kind of formatted who I was today, I realized that I don't want to be in the position. I don't want to put my children in the position that I guess I was put in as a child, where growing up into a economically unstable household. Um, and things were even easier back then, so things are extremely difficult today, and I see families struggling all the time, and I just don't. If I'm already, just living this rat race lifestyle, I want to make sure I can give a child a great quality of life, and I know that personally, because of how much I work and how busy I am, I won't be able to do that. So at the moment, at least. So unfortunately, again, being 30 years old, I don't have any children. While I do have siblings that all have children. So um, and of course, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a startup. I have a business. I'm all over the place. I want to give a child a great quality of life. I can't do that, so I'm honest with myself, and I have to prolong that. And in this country is not really a place I really want to raise a child, considering the climate, the economic and political climate that exists today. Um, so yeah, I mean, really, the basis of what I want to get across is that I just want to inspire people to think and to really sit down with themselves and have that honest conversation. It's like, do I want to live the same repetitive everyday life for the next 40 years while I work my working days, in like a mediocre job? I mean, and I consider a mediocre job any job that's really, if it doesn't make you passionate, if you're not like sitting there and saying like, I love to go to work, I'm dedicated to my craft, which many of us aren't. Especially, again, I've worked in food service, I've worked in hard labor, and while I love what I do as a business owner, working those jobs in the past, I was not passionate about it, and it's not something that many Americans unfortunately have to do these jobs to struggle to get by, and it's just it makes you depressed, it makes you anxious, it makes you stressed out and frustrated to have to go to multiple jobs just to struggle to survive. The jobs don't want to pay any benefits, they pay mediocre wages, and it's like you just have so much going on in your life at home, and not to mention that you're literally working a job that won't even give you a full-time schedule and a decent wage and decent benefits, and then you have to struggle to figure out how you're going to get health care for you and your children, and paying for education, like early child care, and if you want your kids to go to a good school, if you want to save for a college fund, if you want to pay rent, the utilities, especially here in Connecticut, the companies are so corrupt that they raise rates ridiculously, for gas and electric. Not to mention, if I understand this is really like a choice, but like Wi-Fi and cable. It's just insane. And of course, I mean, if you're a renter, sometimes you got to pay renter insurance. And not to mention the entirety of having to, go through a process of renting. You have to have good credit, and you have to have, 2.5 to 3 times the rent. You have to have a massive down payment. It's just crazy. But this is the life. This country has kind of put together for people, and it just doesn't work. At least for me and for many other Americans, it just doesn't work anymore. And with housing completely out of reach, I mean, the town I live in right now, outside of Bridgeport, Connecticut. Well, I grew up in Bridgeport my whole life. The houses there are a little cheaper than this town. But right now, the town where I live in, the houses are actually starting, even for a beat up older home, prices are 7, 8, 900,000, over $1 million for a house for starter homes. Not to mention in Bridgeport alone, about 500,000, anywhere from 400 to 600,000 for a starter home. Completely out of reach for most people. And it's just, again, the taxes are just ridiculous in Connecticut. Property taxes. You have the again, car taxes, which I don't even believe in. That's just a whole nother discussion, but you can really see where I'm pointing at. It's just we're living almost like we're in a fantasy land here. We're living literally in a simulation where it's just become unbearable and just full of stress. Like every single day is another bill, another thing to budget for. You gotta worry about how much you make. You gotta worry about something financial. You just can't live life in this country anymore, and that is exactly what is happening. And again, I'm not spreading any of this to be anti-American. I'm not doing this. It's nothing political, nothing. It's just a straight, hardcore truth of what exactly is happening and what I see on a day-to-day basis living in a upper income town, well, on the poorer side of the town, I guess you could say, and growing up right next door in an extremely impoverished city. So I see it all. And then the next town over from the one I live in is a very upper class town. So I see all three, middle class, upper class, bottom, and how different people live on a daily basis. And it is crazy. And again, most people are just not happy. And it's, but the thing is, we can change that. And I know it's difficult, and I'm not saying that this is easy, and it takes years to really be able to do so. But it can be done. I've watched videos. I've known people that have done the impossible. They've gone from absolute terrible situations, no money, nothing, and they have children, to be able to actually change their life and get out of this country. It's possible. And that don't have to really necessarily even leave the country. I mean, there's places in this country where you can make yourself at home if you do the right thing. But it's becoming increasingly harder, and it's an unfortunate truth. But I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to kind of gauge and let people know, where people are, and I just kind of want to give people a little bit of advice and let y'all know, you're not the only ones out there that kind of see what's going on here and that are living like the same repetitive, stressful, frustrating lives every single day. But I'll leave it at that for today. As always, comment below if you have any of the same opinions that I do, or if you have any questions, and like and subscribe helps out with the algorithm here. I really like to get my message across. I really like to conversate with you guys, because I know there's a lot of people out there that see the same things that I see. They feel the same way, and I really just, my whole message here is to let other people out there know that they are not the only people, that feel the same way. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for today. I hope y'all have an amazing day, and I will see y'all later.